Rodrigo, can you give me like the speed run on what a 203K loan is? And I wanted to make sure that this topic was hit because people sometimes look at properties and they feel that they don't have an opportunity to even get these properties because they're so damaged and they feel that an FHA loan just won't pass. But can you talk about that for a moment so that way we can kind of get an idea of the guidelines around it?
Yeah, so I mean, a 203K loan, FHA 203K loan is pretty simple. It's just a renovation loan that lets you buy a home and finance the repairs into just one mortgage. So it's good for like first-time home buyers. So even like first-time investors, right? You want to buy a home, kind of put it together how you like it, and then maybe live there for a year, and then move out, and then buy another one. But then buyers will also want to fix an updated. They want to update a home, and then anyone who wants to they want a lower down payment, right? So instead of putting in 10 to 15% down on a hard money loan, right? Because that house doesn't specifically qualify for an FHA loan or a conventional loan. We can go with an FHA 203K loan, and they get the benefit of the lower down payment with 3.5%, and they also get the repair costs, right? So up to $35,000, which covers like floor, paint, minor kitchen upgrades, bathroom upgrades, windows, HVAC, stuff like that. But it's up to 35,000. So that's what really makes it nice about those.
Yeah, I mean, the FHA 203K loan, I've had my run-in with that, using it with a buyer. When I first got into the industry, that was actually the first deal that I used. I'm sorry, the first loan that I used in my first deal. And it was very interesting for me because number one, it's not just a, you know, basic FHA loan or conventional loan, 20% down, 10, 15% down loan. And it comes with so many things to consider, like you were mentioning, whether or not the kitchen is up to par, whether or not there are items that are out of, whack or what have you. But in the case that I had, I think the property was pretty much in fair condition, but the pool was empty. And as a lender, lenders are not going to loan on the property if there's a pool with no water in it. Am I right?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And so when we looked at that, we took advantage of just the 203K loan because we wanted to just update the kitchen as well. We actually turned that. It must have been like done in the 80s, and no one invested their money into the property. The landscaping wasn't up usable because it was more desert like. And so they paved out some of the backyard as well. They took advantage of that 203K loan, making it from a property that you could not fund with a regular traditional FHA loan and made it so that they didn't have to come out of pocket with the difference of how much it's going to cost to make it a livable property. And so I think that sometimes people just don't know some of the tools that they could use or take advantage of if they just explored some of the loans that are available to them. They would be able to take advantage of some deals that they think that these homes that are sitting on the market longer than usual, and they might not even be in great condition. You can negotiate down on the price and get money from a loan that makes your deal that much sweeter.
Yeah, I mean, especially in this market right now, you can take advantage of that. Houses are sitting, right? So then, well, I mean, right now it's harder in the Bay Area, right? It gets really
Sure.
competitive, or at least with the ones that are very well priced, right? And yeah,
Yeah.
they don't need updating, but you can take advantage of
Yep.
that depending on the area, right? Because FHA it's not eligible. And like it is eligible in every county, right? But every county has its limits, so
Yes.
it does fall into those same guidelines. But if you could find a good deal that you kind of don't want to you're not really looking to at first because, oh, it's a little beat up. Oh, it needs this. The kitchen needs a remodel. It's from the 1970s. Oh, the bathroom's all messed up. Well, maybe, just maybe, if we dive a little bit deeper, we could potentially put you into a FHA 203 and get you into that
Yeah.
one.
I think that what you're talking about as far as the FHA guidelines and how much they're willing to give out on a loan in a general sense is very important. The Bay Area, where homes are nearly $800,000 on average, but there are markets where you're going to find that regular homes, standard homes are $1 million. There there are cities that I'm sorry, there are counties that have higher FHA minimums, which is really good because you don't want to be priced out altogether. FHA limits do increase year by year, so you'll find that sometimes opportunities might come up and you still might be able to proceed with a deal. But some of the areas that you might find like super attractive, like Oakland Hills, you might find in Piedmont and Montclair that properties have not been updated. I see deals like those all the time where a seller has held on to the property and or has been granted or gifted the property from their, father or grandparents, and the property has just been sitting there. And deals like those pop up, and they do. But when they do pop up, you want to know if it's even worth entertaining, and if a 203K loan could kind of carry you to the finish line and give you a good flip if the numbers make sense, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, as long as it makes sense with the numbers, as long as we can put them in fits into the guidelines that we can do it, we can close it, right? It's just it's not it's gonna take a lot longer. Also, I forgot to mention that's gonna take a lot longer, not a lot longer, but it's gonna be longer than what a normal conventional loan would be or a normal FHA loan, right? You're gonna have to, instead of writing in, let's say, a 17-day close or a 21-day close, you're gonna be, instead of requesting a 45-day to 60-day close, just because these ones they just take a little bit longer, right? It's a little bit more approvals than what it would be with an FHA loan or a conventional loan. So just a little bit, a couple more hurdles, but that's why we request the extra time with the loan contract.
That's right, man. One thing that I wanted to kind of peer into is as a lender, right? You probably see people wanting to use properties as cash flow vehicles. What are some things that you could highlight when a buyer is looking at a deal that could kind of potentially protect them or hedge against bleeding out cash when they're shopping for properties, so that way they don't have to go through a headache? What are some things that you are looking for when you're looking at a property for a client?
So as a lender, right, putting my lender hat on, we're more so talking about what their payment would be, right? So they're not underwater day one, right? Yeah. I mean, it really just depends, right? I mean, when you're underwriting a deal in general, even like when you do it, right? And it also depends on the state, right? Like we talked about it before. California, you're not essentially really looking for, not really something you're looking for, but you're not typically given much cash flow opportunity, or there's not that many opportunities for cash flow as there is like in other states, right? So, in order for you to make sense, you also have to look at it for like in the future, right? The one, let's say you purchase, or actually let's take it back, right? Even like let's just, we were talking about it before. If you purchase let's say a beat up home in, let's say for example right here in the middle, let's talk about Pleasanton. Let's say
Yeah,
if you find a beat up home in Pleasanton, and once you becoming an investor, you want to find a beat up home in Pleasanton. That house, let's say it's worth right now it's 800,000 because it's so beat up. What happens if you dump in an extra, let's say $200,000 in, I mean, the houses in Pleasanton are worth at least 1.2, 1.3 million. You can tell
that's
me
right.
as a
Yeah.
realtor, but it's right. You dump an extra $200,000 just to make some easy upgrades, right? But that's one way that they can do, right? So then you buy the house at 800,000, you refinance, take that cash out, and then do it again. And this is a burr
That's right.
method. That's one way. The other way that I've seen a lot is, and it just sucks, right? If we're talking about California, but just by putting more money down, right? The more money you put down, and it's kind of the opposite of what we kind of want to do, right? But the more money you put down, the lower your payment is going to be. On top of that, just because your LTV um is lower, that means that
You're
you're going to get
talking
a better
about
interest
loan
rate,
to value to kind of make sure the
loan to
acronym is
value.
spelled out.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so your loan to value, you're going to have a better rate if your loan to value is 60% rather than if it was 80%, because there's less risk, right? It's less risk. So that's another way people offset their payment as well, just so they can cash flow a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that I tried to make my system more simple for investors, so that way There's no confusion. The more simple that we get, the easier it gets to understand what it looks like when investing. All I like to do is talk about how much that debt responsibility is going to look like versus the income that you're going to be producing per tenant per unit. This is an easy metric, but if an investor doesn't know what to look for when it comes to the market rents, they could be over assumptive and potentially shoot themselves in the foot. So it's like, of course, you want to make sure that you're investing with a strategy and thinking about how much you're going to put down, how much the debt's going to be, how many units are there going to be, vacancy rate. But if you over assume that you can get a higher number on your price per unit, you could potentially not see that big red flag that's at that door. So think going back to the basics and just doing comps has to be a focus, has to be a people get tired of doing like the fundamentals, but I think fundamentals make for the safeguards, the railings that make real estate so much fun. So as long as people are focusing on like what the comps is, not just on the price of the property, but the price of the rents, and then understanding how much that debt's going to cost, that has got a little bit more expensive in the last few years, but it doesn't mean deals don't exist. You just have to consider those costs of those debts, price those into the deal. And as long as it all makes sense at the end of the day, you probably have yourself a good situation. Or if you don't see something that's fruitful, you can back away from it and save yourself from hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars of pain and suffering. So it's just about
Yeah,
like,
no, comps are important.
yeah, yeah, man.
Well, I was gonna say, right, because even when it comes to an appraisal, right? I mean, appraisers use comp. I mean, that's how they base that's what they base everything off of, right? Their comps, right? They do, and also that's another way that at least investors are protected, or even just buyers in general, they're protected by that appraisal, right? Those appraisers, we can't choose appraisers, right? That's given. That you get a random appraiser, and from there basically give you and the bank an idea of what that property is going to rent for. If it, let's say it's a triplex or a fourplex or even a
Yeah.
like a multi-unit property, right? They're going to give you basically what these properties are rent for if it's vacant, right? If it's not vacant, um, depends on how you want to go from there, right? But that appraisal is also there to protect you, even though it can cost you from $600 to, depending on how many units, so like $1,200, right? But that's there to protect you as well. Um, so I mean that's why banks have them, and don't think about it as an extra cost just for the bank, right? Just to close. I mean, think about it also as a benefit to yourself because they're also doing that job for you. You can back out of that deal as long as you have that appraisal contingency, right? But um, that's a way to protect yourself also from losing a lot of money. So
I'm glad you mentioned the appraisal contingency, but dude, like you said, put that lender cap on. You're also a realtor. I mean, when you're looking at protecting clients, what's so important about having those contingencies? And why do they play such a safeguard with investors when it comes to finding new unknown problems?
I mean, listen, I think, and the way I learned it was, and this is just me, right? If I leave the sauce out there, man, it's fine, right? But and sometimes you can't do it in the Bay Area. It's really hard to have a lot of contingencies in place because it's so competitive, right? But I
Sure,
think
that's a
the
good
loan
point, man.
contingency is very important. I think the loan contingency and the appraisal contingency is very important. Even if there's an appraisal waiver, I mean, we'll talk about appraisal waivers later, right? But the loan
Yeah,
contingency to me is the most important contingency there is. Let's just say you're given the CTC, right? And you get it in like, let's say you're ready to close in 10 days and you're set to close in 17 days and you have to remove the loan contingency on day 13, day 14. I say don't remove it. I'm That's just me, right? Because it protects you. You just never know what can happen. Let's say you get the clear to close, and let's just say as an investor, you lose your job, you lose your regular job. Now what? You're out that deposit. How much is a typical deposit in the Bay Area? 3%, right?
that's right.
3% of $1 million. What is that? $30,000.
Steep, steep.
Let's say you lose your job and it's not your fault. You get laid off a tech company. Let's say Elon Musk just fires you for no reason. He's just laying people off. Like, dude,
These things
You're out
happen,
that they're
and you see
you
them
have
on
you.
you see them on the news all the time today, right?
I've had this happen before. I've had a client lose his job, right, in the middle of escrow. It's really unfortunate. But we had and I made sure the realtor kept the loan contingency. The listing agent kept pressing to remove it and said they were going to give us the notice to perform, even though we had 4 days left, right, to close. They kept
When you're
pressing, they
talking
kept
about
pressing.
notices to perform, I know that somebody's listening and they're saying, "What is a notice
Yeah,
to
sorry.
perform?"
So basically, it's just a formal letter slash contract, right, that is signed by the seller and the listing agent that notices the realtor and basically, I mean, obviously it's more so for the lender, right, depending on what it is, but and the buyer saying that if you cannot perform in X amount of days, we're canceling the contract. They're going to cancel the contract.
Which nobody wants that to happen, especially with money on the line, especially when time to close is on the horizon. But this stuff does happen. You and I both know that somebody can give you a notice to perform, which is a signal that you could be on the wrong track, but it still allows you a few days to kind of get yourself in order, kind of get back into the bearings of things to get the deal in good standard. Whatever they're asking, the notice to perform is a broad statement. It's just saying whatever they're asking that you perform it. It could be remove a contingency, it could be close the transaction, right?
Yeah, you got you think on like that's exactly what it is. So, but that's one of the reasons why I emphasize not removing the loan contingency, right? Because, things do happen. Think that, I'm not saying I want these things to happen, but things do happen. And that loan contingency is pretty much the biggest thing that can protect you out of a deal, right? I don't want a client to lose $30,000, even if it's $5,000, right? Even if my client is buying a home in the Central Valley, 1% of they gave a 1% deposit for a $500,000 home in Manteca or something. I don't want any of my
Sure.
clients to lose out on a deposit just because, now they lost their job and they lost their deposit. FBS,
Right.
right? And you can't expect sellers to be nice and just give you back the deposit.
No.
And even then, let's just say you do cancel, you can't you you don't even know when you're going to get that money back. Escrow takes a long time sometimes to give you back that money. Like I was just in contract last month where our buyer canceled because at first he was comfortable with his mortgage payment, and then at the end he was like, I gotta make child support payments, so I just don't feel comfortable with this. And I'm like, okay, you know what? It's fine. Guess what? We have the loan contingency. We were 3 days out for closing, and he ended up canceling. But I get where he was coming from. But that's
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
those things are in place, just to protect
Yes.
your deposit. Because if he had removed it, he's out that
That money would
deposit.
have been lost. Yeah, man.
Exactly.
And like you
So
were
even
saying,
if it
like
isn't like
sometimes
just
the
a
turnaround time for that money to come back to you, a week, 2 weeks, perhaps three.
it's not a fun position to be in, right? Nobody wants something to not close, right? You don't want to cancel a contract, but at the same time, for our investors and our first time home buyers, or even just people who have purchased before, right? We're there to protect you. This is why the advice, we're always there to give you the advice that we think is correct, right? We're never there to steer you in the wrong way. Even if someone pressures you to do something, like, doesn't mean you have to do it.
Yeah, you gotta love those contingencies, man. Things happen, life happens, layoffs happen. You might wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Things happen. And you want to be able to decide whether or not this is even the right fit for you. But ultimately, that's why I like to do our due diligence before we even get into the batter's arena or batter's ring. So that way that you don't have to guess whether or not this is even a good fit for you. You've decided, you've calculated, you've understood what the risks are, what the responsibilities are, and what your expectations are going to look like once the deal closes. So you're pretty much in good standing, understanding that we've had a conversation around X's and O's. You don't want to ever have to assume that this is the situation or like this deal is the deal for you and that it's a fail proof. You always want to have your contingencies just in case. Like you were mentioning, the Bay Area is unique and such that if there's a lot of competition, you're going to have one or maybe two contingencies out where there are three. Loan contingency meaning being the most important, the most common to be remaining. And so you want to make sure that you have those considerations. And it's not about just the fact that contingencies are important. Every county, every location is different. Central Valley's not going to operate the same way as uh, the coastline. The Bay Area is very competitive. You're not gonna have many people shopping using 3.5%, and that's why a lot of non-contingent offers were going out when COVID was around, because your 3.5% offer now doesn't look as appealing when somebody's coming in with cash or 20% down or with no contingencies at all. So it's just about knowing what your market is, knowing what the norms are, knowing what the conditions of the market is, so that way you don't have to assume that your price is the most important thing. Sometimes price is just a price. Sometimes the terms make the deal.
Exactly, right? I mean, that's why even we don't qualify based off the purchase price, right? We qualify based off the payment. And payment pretty much is the most important thing to look at as an investor and as a buyer, right? You don't want to put yourself in a position where you're going to be underwater day one. I know we were talking about it one time, but it's just you don't want to do yourself that disservice, which is why we do it off payment as well. I mean, typically, even if it's an investor or a buyer, right? The max for conventional and investors, right? We can use 50% of qualifying income to and let's just say you make $10,000 a month, no debts, and you qualify for a payment of $5,000 a month max, right?
That's
Do
right.
you want to max that out?
Right.
Probably not. I don't know. I mean, everybody to each their own, right? But everybody knows their financial. Everybody knows their financial where they stand financially, but is that the best case scenario for a lot of people? Probably not, right? You don't want 50% of your income to go towards your mortgage
Hey,
if you want to invest.
Rodrigo, I don't want to do a drift or a quick turn on something, but are you okay if I, introduce a different idea? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Can I ask you, I mean, if an investor that owns properties, right? They're savvy in apartments and multifamily properties, but they're interested in investing in more property. They want to get more doors, of course. Why not? What are some things that you want to consider when it comes to buying more property as it relates to a HELOC or cash out refi or even a DSCR? Can you kind of like hit on those topics for us so that way an investor that is shopping can even have an idea or inspiration shift? Because investors, they're pretty savvy. We both know that investors know a lot about a lot, but can you kind of like talk about the HELOC, the cash out refinance, and the DSCR as it relates to investing in properties and getting more doors for that investor?
100%, 100%. And it's a good topic to talk about just because I just did a pre-approval for a couple yesterday, and they're super savvy, right? They own 5 different properties plus the one that they live in, right? But they own 5 different properties and plus the one they live in, and they're savvy. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, and now they're looking to buy another property in Tracy, right? The duplex in Tracy, and it just came on the market. And they have a couple of properties. We're looking at it. Oh, I would love to refinance this property. We have a bunch. We have maybe like $400,000 in equity, but our rate is 3%, right? Our rate is 3%, so we don't really want to touch it. Okay, well, I know this is kind of out of the blue, but maybe we can do a HELOC, right? This is where a HELOC will come in, right? You don't touch your mortgage, right? You keep that 3%, whatever. You keep it, right? Your payments are $900 a month for a triplex. Yeah, you don't want to touch it, right? So we turn more to a HELOC. We turn into a HELOC. Yeah, the rate for a HELOC is a little higher, right? It came out to like 10.04%, 10.04%. But they were able to tap into their equity, right? They're able to tap into their equity, and from there they can use that money for a down payment, and specifically DSCR in this case, right? DSCR, you can use funds from that HELOC to purchase another property. They're going to put 20% down, and with that 20% down, their payment comes out to around $3,300, $3,400, and rent and Tracy's pretty good. Rent and Tracy's pretty good, right? So they're going to be able to rent out the property in Tracy if they get their offer accepted. They're going to rent out the property in Tracy, and they're going to be able to either break even or make some money on it. But that's just one way they can tap in. That's just one way investors tap into their current equity right now, more so than a refinance. There was another one where um, I had a client as well. They had a good amount of equity in the property. The rate, it's what they had a couple of years. I want to say this was a year and a half ago when they purchased. So the rate's around 7.5. It's so around the same rates that there are right now for investors. That's what they are. So like, oh, it doesn't really make sense to refinance. Well, what if you're able to take that money out that they have right now on that property, and they're basically able to keep that same rate, right? So their rate doesn't change, but they're able to tap into their equity that way as well. And their payment actually goes down just by a little bit, just because their loan term restarted again at 30 years. But
I see.
that's one way that, yeah, it's just a strategy. Yeah. So I don't know if that's kind of what you were asking, but
No, no, you nailed it on the
that's
head,
one way
man.
that they tap into it.
It's important for folks to know just what options, what routes they can take when it comes to investing. Some people that they just think that it's just about the money that's in their pocket and what they qualify for rather than what their assets are and what they can leverage to go ahead and use to get another set of properties. And sometimes there are deals that you just don't want to pass up on that can be extremely high cash flowing or net return. But if you don't have the money, you might feel like you're not in the realm of possibilities. So just knowing your options is just enough value for you just to consider those deals when they do show up on your step, right? That deals like those don't deals that produce at a high level, they just don't pop up out of nowhere. It takes a lot of energy and effort to even dig up a deal, let alone shop it and get your eyes on it because you might not have that pool of investors that are even giving out opportunities for others to even invest in. So it's just a matter of knowing what you can do and what you may not have known that you could do so that you can make it, a play in the market with something that you didn't even have to have cash in your pocket for.
I was gonna say that it's always, let's say there's a deal on table, and let's just say your rate for whatever reason it is like 4%, 3%. What if that deal is still it could still bring you cash? It'll bring you like a bunch of cash, not a bunch of cash, but let's say you're gonna be cash flowing on that new property you're gonna buy, right? It's always important to price out how much your payment is gonna be with that refinance after the money that you take out, because at the end of the day you'll be taking money out, right? So it's always important to price out, say, okay, after I refinance, this is what my payment is gonna be. If I can still make a little bit of money, even if my rate is higher, making money, I'm still cash flowing, and I can buy this other property that's going to generate more cash flow and equity, right? Equity that I can tap into.
Right.
Why not? Why wouldn't it make sense, right? It just really comes
That's
down
right.
to not being scared to break down the numbers with the lender, even if it's not me, if it's some random dude. It doesn't matter. It's just, as long as the numbers are presented to you in a way that will make you money. It just doesn't hurt to price things out. Pricing it out is free. It
Right.
doesn't cost you any money to price something out, because at the end of the day, yeah, maybe your rate might be higher, but you actually might bring in more cash flow, and you're going to keep building equity in
Did
process.
I